Hello, this is Cliff Butler here to share with you a brief look at a new documentary in production about the history of roller derby. This will be more of an in-depth and personal account featuring media and interviews with various skaters from roller derby's heyday of the 60s and 70s. We hope you enjoy the preview. Roller derby is a game comprised of men and women. Basically, the whole principle and idea of the game is to lap your opposing skater on a bank track to score points. And when that happens, points are tallied up, and then there's actually 8 periods in a game between men and women. And at the end of the game, with the 12-minute periods for each period, the game becomes stacked with the points, and then who has the highest amount of points wins the game.
Roller derby was just an amazing sport. I mean, it was huge at its peak when I first discovered it. I mean, skaters were household names. Millions of people watched it on television. It sold out huge arenas across the country, Madison Square Garden, the Cow Palace. I mean, it even filled huge outdoor stadiums, Shea Stadium, Comiskey Park, Oakland Coliseum. And, you know, it involves so much drama, brutal contact, high speed, dangerous speed, bone-shattering, you know, falls that the skaters took. And, you know, there was something for everybody. Unlike any sport, it was also so different because each team consisted of 2 squads, a guys and a girls squad. And so the women would skate the odd periods, first, third, fifth, and so on, and the guys would skate the other periods, 2, 4, 6, 8, and they would combine the scores. And so women competed, you know, just like the guys, same rules and everything else, and it was groundbreaking.
I got into roller derby in 1968, and it was pretty much a fluke. I had moved out here from New Jersey, Atlantic City, New Jersey. I was still in high school, and my sister was a big fan, and I had never heard of roller derby, so coming from the East Coast. And she started taking me to games, and, you know, it was fun. I thought, wow, I could probably do that, but just because I had skated growing up all my life. And so we lived in Alameda, lived on Buena Vista Avenue. And I was going to the 7-Eleven one Saturday, and I heard all this whistling and noise, and I looked up, and it said Bay Area Roller Derby Training Center. And I was like, wow, maybe I can go in and skate, right? Because I didn't know anyone. And so I was all abuzz, really not interested in roller derby. I just wanted to skate and meet people. So after, you know, twisting my mother's arm and everybody to let me do it, I went down, and Bobby Atkinson was there, and I remember my mom had sent me $50 for my birthday. And I said, you know, I want to come in and skate, but I only have $50. Do you have any, you know, skates I could buy? And she said, I think you might be in luck, because we had someone come down and start training, bought a brand new pair of skates, and she decided she didn't want to do it. So she said, you know, what size are you? And I said, oh, I'm about an 8. She said, well, I think these are around 7.5. So of course, you know, I just squeezed my foot into that 7.5 skate. And yeah, I started skating. I was a natural, only because I'd grown up skating. Roller skating was what we did. And flat track skating. I had won a little trophy, I think, when I was around 12 or 13 for the fastest flat track skater, you know, up and back and back. So I had the skating down. And, you know, it's just figuring out how to do that 5 stride. And then, you know, I loved it.
I'll never forget when I first discovered roller derby. It was the day of Bobby Kennedy's funeral, and every channel, and there was very few back then, ABC, NBC, and CBS were the main ones, and they were all carrying the funeral procession. And it was going on and on and on. And as a little kid, I woke up early to see cartoons. It was a Saturday morning, and unfortunately, the funeral was going on. But then I finally, around noon, I changed to Channel 2, which was a local independent station. And that's when they were airing the reruns of the previous week's games with the San Francisco Bay Bombers. And so that's when I discovered roller derby and the Bombers. And I was hooked. I just loved it. I mean, you know, it was, when I first went to my first game, it was like landing in Oz, because we had a little television, floor model, black and white TV. But when we went to Kezar Pavilion and you walked into the building, you went through the front lobby and you went down into a pit. There was these ramps, and it was a smoke-filled pit. And on the other end were these blinding lights, and that's where they had the cameras set up. And the announcer was in the back. You could see where his backdrop was. And my dad took us over and up the side, and we were like looking right down on the Bomber bench. And it was like seeing all this stuff in color now, seeing their uniforms, the orange and the brown, and seeing the color of the track. I mean, my eyes were just bulging out of my head. And I don't even know who won. I just remember it was the time of my life. And that's what I wanted to do from that point forward.
One Saturday morning, I was sitting around and got a call from Buddy Atkinson, Sr., and he said, "Hey, can you come down? Yeah, I want to talk to you." And so I was like, "Sure." So I went down, and he said, Barbara Baker is out, and they need someone to replace her tonight, and maybe, you know, 2 other nights, depending on how long she is out. And so I'm wondering if you might want to go and skate on the Bombers tonight at the Cal Palace. And I was like, over the moon. It was crazy. Like, I remember just running from the training center all the way to my sister and brother-in-law's home, and I was like out of breath and excited and, you know, losing my mind over it all. So, you know, I got in the house and told my sister, and she was like, "What?" Totally surprised, right? She knew I could skate, but she had no idea what was happening at the training school. And so it was at the Cow Palace, and it was the Bay Bombers against the Braves, which was Bob Woodbury and Ronnie Robinson, right? And this game was so heated and so hot. I mean, Woodbury and Bob and Ronnie just lit that place on fire. And when the game was over, they had to call in the National Guard, because the fans were so revved up that they literally came and circled the track. And here I was, first time ever, right, on a professional level, and I was like totally afraid, right? What is going on? But you know, they got us off the track, but you know, what a way to start a career, right?
Roller derby to me is the most exciting sport I ever saw. I saw it when I was 11 years old on television, and it reached out to me probably because it had women that were competing, and I was doing some track and field in my home county, Contra Costa County. And that just led to never, you know, always wanting to be a roller derby skater, even at 11 years old, and that stuck with me through high school and through college. And, you know, I started the training center when I was a junior at Cal. Why? Because the training center was in Alameda and it was a bus ride away, so I took the bus every night and was really fortunate that I got to be trained by Buddy Akin Sr. And I kind of trained with Buddy for about 2 years before I went on the road. And I think fortunate, I kind of see myself as maybe the last generation of skaters that really came out of a real true training center and trained by the great Buddy Akin Sr.
My first game at the Gardens, I'll never forget it. We were staying in a little town called Nanuet, New York, because we didn't stay downtown New York at all. It was just too busy. And we took a bus down from up there. And when I got off of the bus to go into the building, there was a crowd of people there. And so they would surround you. And somebody stole, I never will forget this, somebody stole my belt that I had around my leather coat. So yeah, they snatched the belt as a new souvenir, you know. But anyway, as we went into the building, and I had my little fur hat on, the whole 9 yards, and I skated the game that night, and I was kind of pissed off the whole night because my belt was missing, you know. So
one of my favorite things I ever saw at a game, funniest things I ever saw at a game, I should say. So it involves Dee Morrissey. Oh, okay. So, you know, she used to be the scorekeeper.
right.
So she used to sit at that the announcer's table alongside either Ken or Don, who, you know, whoever was doing the announcing.
Right next to the track?
Right next to the track. So the Bombers were skating against the Chiefs, and this was in '77. Mm-hmm. And this was in San Jose. I'm sitting up on the stage where they kept the cameras. Mm-hmm. And Charlie is going up against Buddy Atkinson Jr.
Yeah.
And just beating the hell out of Buddy Atkinson Jr., right? Mm-hmm. And so it's towards the end of the jam, and time is running off the clock. So they come around the turn, they hit the straightaway. Charlie sends Buddy over the rail. Buddy, now you remember Dee, she always used to carry that purse with her.
Right.
And it was a big purse, you know, it was like, you know, almost like the size of a pillow.
Big sack, yeah.
And so she used to sit it like right next to her.
Yeah.
Charlie sent Buddy over the rail, and Buddy landed ass first on top of Dee's purse. Ooh. And I'm sitting over on the stage, and I could hear all the life exit out of that purse. It was and then the look on Dee's face when Buddy landed on her purse. Yeah. She was, motherfucker, you landed on my purse. It was the most hysterical thing I ever saw on a roller derby game.
Some of the match races I had were pretty gruesome. I mean, you know, there was a couple of them I got carried out. And then I'd go back in the dressing room and sit back there and wouldn't come out for the rest of the game. It depended on which role I was playing, you know, how bad I was hurt. And a lot of times I couldn't go anywhere or do anything else because we would have to wait until the building completely emptied out. And when the building emptied out, then I was able to, you know, to go ahead and leave. But I used to be the last one to be out of there because they actually announced me being in the hospital or gone to the hospital or something like that. So I would just have to stay put.
I remember Kim Monty when he was a coach of the Red Devils with Annie. And it was very early on. I was a rookie. And maybe it was when I had first, you know, was asked to be on the team. And I remember he came up to me after a game. And he said, this is ridiculous. You need to stop smiling and giggling and laughing when somebody is, you know, hitting you. And, you know, and he said, so, you know, you need to toughen up and you need to act like a red shirt. So go home and practice in the mirror. Like, get your mean on, and quit the smiling, the giggling, the laughing when you're out here on my team, or maybe you won't be on my team.
For a few games, they let me on the infield to take pictures. Mm-hmm. So now, I mean, talk about a different perspective. You're right there, and you can kind of see them huddling up, and what's going on the infield. And it was normally though, if I take a picture, I want to focus on them, all the time. And you can't do that with roller derby, because if you start following somebody, you start doing this whole spinning around, getting dizzy. And I quickly realized that the best thing to do is, because I wanted to capture their expressions, was to capture them coming towards me. So I'd position myself in the straightaway and capture them as they're coming out of the turn.
In 1975, a bunch of great skaters put together a series of games in New York. The outfit was called Roller Stars. They played Madison Square Garden. It was one of the greatest games that I've ever seen. They hadn't quite gotten it together yet. I'm not sure what their financial investments were or who their financial investors were, but it just didn't happen. And in '76, out here in the Bay Area, they did a summer combination old-timers game and softball benefit, the Run Run Jones benefit game for his charities. And then in the fall of 1976, they skated another game at Cal State Hayward. They had no television. They were relying on just all sorts of traditional advertising to get the word out. Wildcat postering, radio station ads. Went to the game, the place was packed again. I went down to the announcer's table and said I would like to produce it for television. I met Don Drury, and then later that night met Charlie O'Connell and Mike Gammon. And they were the three founders of what became the International Roller Skating League. And all credit to them. They really wanted to skate a great game, and they really wanted to put it together. They were looking for outside funding, hadn't found it. All I wanted to do was produce television. I didn't want to be a promoter. As the months went on, the agreement was made that I would produce the television in exchange for the foreign rights for the television. I had this idea that if I could pay for the television truck, I could sell the games to Mexico. I had a long-standing relationship with Channel 20 by that point, and the old Channel 20, I was involved in the production of The Worst of Hollywood, Jazz After Midnight, Preview. A bunch of us were also working with Bob Wilkins over for creature features at Channel 2, where roller derby was persona non grata, not allowed in the door. You said roller derby at Channel 2 in 74, 75, it's like you might as well have been saying a really dirty word. So Channel 20 and I made a deal to put the roller derby show on TV. Don Drury, Mike Gammon, and Charlie came up with 4 weeks of old videotapes, including the Roller Stars and some other unusual tapes. And we did our first game at Kezar Pavilion, April 24th of 1977. All of us went out and did publicity, especially Don, and Mike, and Charlie, and Calvello, and Joan Weston. Everyone did publicity, and the place that afternoon was packed. It was packed to the rafters. You couldn't even get in. The walls were sweating. It was so full. We taped that game, and it was a great success. Right during that point, I was asked to become one of their partners, and I became a 25% partner in the company.
I think if the league under David had gone longer, and I think I personally had more training, right? More skating, more training. I think I could have been another generation of leaders for the women, but that didn't happen. But for my career, after roller derby, I did become a mentor for many women in the two companies that I worked for. And I think my experience, honestly, with the roller derby, and I always share that, with the women I'm mentoring, because we talk about there's different ways of communication, right? So you can talk about it, but sometimes it's like with roller derby, it could be more physical than just talk, right? So there's different ways to communicate, and just about. I think when other women now hear me talk about what we did in roller derby, they're pretty amazed at what women accomplished. I don't think a lot of younger women have knowledge of, it's not been that long since Gloria Steinem, right? And roller derby was just that rare microcosm where women were in charge, right? Women were strong, right? Women owned businesses. And so I think just operating with, like just hanging through osmosis, but hanging out with those people, all of that's very normal for me. And I think when I kind of explain to the women I've mentored in later life and other positions I've had, I think that's really rare for them to hear.
I really did, and in hindsight, because I think it's a really beautiful question, and one that, looking back, it would have been great to have that consciousness, but I didn't. But I think there were people. I think Joan Weston was, I think there were women there that was certainly knew where they were, knew what they were doing, and the impact that they would have on other women. I'm just saying, for me, I wasn't in that lane. And I was, at least for the first 2 or 3 years in roller derby, I was just in awe, right? Because it was nothing that I didn't even know what roller derby was, right? So to be living the life that I was living, right, so young, like in high school, I started skating professionally in high school. So I was, I was real young. And I was of a young mind, so I didn't think of it that way, yeah. I think part of the situation around that also had to do with how roller derby was put out into the world, media-wise. I mean, it did not get the attention as, like tennis. I mean, it wasn't placed up in this platform that drew a lot of attention to it. For women, and certainly some skaters, to really, have the opportunity to even think about being role models. Yeah. I think that it was, it just wasn't marketed that way. Yeah, and that was, that's the hard part, because I mean, I think about Tilly so much, being on the Bombers and how loved she was, in the Bay Area. I mean, Dolores Tucker, excuse me, right? So, yeah, all the little children in Oakland, who liked to skate, definite.
It wasn't quite the same game. We would change up a little bit, I remember a jam that I used to have for what we call the blow-off, which is the last jam of the period or the game. I would bring out red and the white, or I was a white shirt. Red shirt, white shirt go out, and I would get rid of the red shirt, and I would come into the rear of the pack and do my little sidestep dance. And I would sidestep 2 to 3 people at one time, and usually the game would be they were 2 people, 2 points ahead, and then I would sidestep 2 of them, and then right at the last 5 seconds, I'd sidestep the 3rd one to get the 3rd point to win the game.
When I first started to train, at that point, there wasn't a training school set up. So whenever the track was set up before a game, and actually I got a job initially as a track crew member. So I'd set up the track. We'd spend about 3 hours setting it up. Talk about, back-breaking work. I'd be exhausted, and here would come these other guys that would want to train that actually had experience. They were either on a team before or at least went through the old training school. So they'd come in fresh, and I'd be exhausted from working on the track. But right away, it was like, this is my opportunity. So I'd put my skates on, lace them up, we'd get on the track. And the one that started training us initially was Jerry Murray, which was a legendary skater from back in the day. And actually, her and her husband, and also her son, Mike Gammon, who's a superstar, he grew up on skates. So a lot of people would probably say, if they don't know much about roller derby, they'd go, well, why is a woman, working with you guys, trying to teach you guys stuff when it's such a physical sport? But I mean, the women, they were very physical, and she was old school. So I mean, she had incredible endurance, professionalism, and talk about graceful too on skates. We were all so eager to make a team, and we all felt that we deserved it. And with all the falling, the bruises, the aches, the pains, the cuts, I really felt I deserved to be on the team. When is this going to happen? And then one night, out of the clear blue, I walk into the building, and the owner at that time, David Lipschultz, pulls me aside and says, Alvin Mallory, who was one of the top skaters on the Bombers, he got rushed to the hospital with appendicitis. So you're skating tonight. And I went from suddenly like, damn, I want to be out there, I deserve this, to like, holy crap. I was the first one dressed. I was in the locker room first. I was all dressed up. But, as the new kid, unfortunately, I would have stuck out like a sore thumb anyway, obviously, like a deer with his eyes in the headlights, something like that. But they gave me a jersey. There was a blank jersey. No name on it, no Bomber's name on it, and no number on it, no number on the back. And I already was going to stick out, like I said, like a sore thumb. But, that's what they gave me. And, hey, it's just, I guess it's part of the dues, breaking in. And if you want it bad enough, you'll put up with things. So nobody, but the other thing is, though, a lot of people will talk about roller derby. Some people will say, oh, it's all fake, and it's not. But in fact, when we were trained, nobody ever said a word about that. And even my first game, I'm in the locker room, people are coming in. Nobody said a word about anything being said, anything being fake. But so nothing is basically said about, set plays or anything being fake. So we come out from my warm-ups, and I'm like, God, I hope I don't trip and fall. But, so I survived that. I remember my first autograph. I remember you being there to support me, which was a huge, huge help, man. You don't know what that means when you see a friendly face.
So here's a story my grandmother once told me. So she would often invite skaters to the house. Like I said, my grandmother always, took care of skaters. So one night after a game, a bunch of skaters came by the house, and they ended up staying over. So it turned into a sleepover. So our house, it was 2 levels. The bottom level was the garage. You go up this flight of stairs. Once you get to the top of the stairs, you turn right. There's a front door. Walk straight through the front door. There's the living room. If you were to walk up that flight of stairs and keep walking, you'd walk into a wall. Well, behind that wall was my grandmother's bedroom. So this one night, it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. There were a bunch of skaters spread throughout the house sleeping. Eddie Krebs is sleeping on the couch. About 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear at the front door. And my grandmother yells out from the bedroom, Eddie, can you go answer the front door? I think it's Taft. So Eddie gets up, goes to the front door, opens the front door. There's nobody there. So he goes back to sleep. 20 minutes later, Eddie? Eddie gets up again, goes to the front door. Nobody's there. Finally, another 20 minutes later, Eddie gets up. Now he's pissed. Opens the front door. God damn it! Whoever the hell this is, you're pissing me the fuck off. It was my grandmother behind that wall, knocking on the wall, tricking Eddie into going and answering the door.
In 1980, in the summer of 1980, my league, the International Roller Skating League, was struggling, okay? There was a gas crisis going on, and we were in debt. We were tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I didn't know where we were going to be able to promote the next game. I was only able to schedule the games a month ahead. I would call the Oakland Auditorium or the Kezar or Sacramento or Stockton and say, look, we need the game to be on the first weekend of the month because that's when everyone gets paid, and we can't do a game the last 9 days of the month because nobody's got any money for food or gas. Okay, it was a bad time. And during that time, I'm going to my parents and saying, I may go broke. And my dad's figuring out how he can mortgage the house again to get me some working capital. My dad was a great guy that way, in every way. So we get a phone call from a talent agency, locally based. And the talent agency says, we're sending entertainers to South America. And there's a promoter in Buenos Aires. His name is Garello and Cal. He saw the roller derby on television the last time he was in San Francisco, and he'd like to bring you guys to South America. And we said, great. What's the deal? Well, you can have 50% of the box office, and he'll pay for your plane tickets and to get a track down there. And I thought, well, 50% of the box office, based on my other experiences, if it's a crooked box office, I'm going to end up with $1 and have to figure out how to pay the skaters. They said, no, I want a guarantee. Okay, you can have a flat guarantee, and whatever the number was, you can have a flat guarantee, and whatever the number was $50,000. Okay? That was our guarantee to go to South America. So we sent a few videotapes down there. We didn't know that Roller Games was on the air already down there. And 4 weeks before we're supposed to go into the celebrated Luna Park, which is it's the Madison Square Garden of South America. The World Boxing Association, or World Boxing Council, the family that owned that controlled the boxing world in South America. It was listed as the great place to go. But we didn't know that the military government had looked at roller games on television and said, this thing is a farce. We're not going to allow roller derby to come to South America, okay, to Buenos Aires. This is a sham on the public. Well, they were looking at the LA Thunderbirds tapes. So we didn't know what to do. And that $50,000 was being held in trust for us until we got down there. That weekend, Garello and Cal, the promoter, was walking along one of the malls in Buenos Aires. And there's this long line of people waiting to go into the movie theater. And the movie theater was just showing Rollerball. Rollerball had just been released in South America, and it was a big hit. And he calls up the next day. He says, I've got a solution to our problem. You guys need to play Rollerball when you come here, and everything will be great. And I said to him, I'm okay with the game. I'm not okay with the motorcycles, and I'm not okay with the skaters all dying. But we can come up with something. So we rented the Richmond Memorial Auditorium. And over the course of the next, I would say, 2 weeks, we came up with this game. And the idea was that instead of where in roller derby both teams are on offense and defense at the same time, only one team would be on offense. And then the next jam, the opposite team would be on offense. And all the other players would be on defense. So in this game, the jammer has a silver painted softball. Looks like the rollerball from the movie. He holds onto it. Now he has to go lap the skaters opposite team. He does that. If he does that, he successfully throws the ball into the lit hoop at the end of the track, and he scores the points based on however many people he passed. It's a simple game. It's similar to the game that Jerry Hill and Buddy Atkinson Jr. were doing in rollerball, right? In roller bowler. Similar to the game that they were doing in roller bowler. And the game looked good, and it looked dangerous. And Cliff Butler and JoJo Stafford and Sandy Dunn and all the skaters are excited about this whole thing. Some of them are having problems getting off from work because now they've all got full-time careers and they're only skating on weekends. And this is a 10-night engagement, the end of August of that year. We flew down on Pan Am. The first night, the place was sold out. It was beyond sold out. And the craziest part of it all was Gabrielini, the promoter, he was pacing about as nervous as he could. But Tito Licturi, the owner of the building and the heir to the boxing dynasty, pulled into the building with this solid gold-colored Mercedes with painted gold. The emblem was gold, the hubcaps were gold, all the trim was gold on this car. Just about the same time that I just walked through the building for the first time. And I walked up to him and I said, Senior Lictoria, hi, I'm David Lipschultz from the International Roller Skating League. It's an honor to meet you. But I have a question for you. How come in all the international arena guides it says that this building seats 20,000 people? And I look at it, and it's smaller than my Cow Palace in San Francisco, and the Cow Palace only seats 14,000. I go, how can it possibly seat 20,000? He says, you North Americans, you have no vision. And I go, okay. I say, but how do you see 20,000 people in here? He says, well, at 6 o'clock, Los Bomberos come here. I go, the bombers come here? No, the bombers are at the hotel. No, Los Bomberos. Bombarderos? Bomberos, bombarderos. The firemen come here. Okay, what do? With all of their hoses, they hose down and they wash all the bleachers down. Okay, so now you got clean bleachers. What does that have to do with anything? He says, at 7 o'clock, we open the gates. All the audience comes pouring in. They go running to the popular section, to the bleachers. The bleachers are sopping wet. I go, okay, so? He says, you really don't have any vision, do you? I say, I don't understand it. He says, they can't sit down because it's sopping wet. They stand there. We pack them in like sardines, and that's how we get 20,000 people in this building. So, the very first night, the building was packed like sardines. We were not getting a percentage of the box office. It was a killer. We walked in the box office. They're counting tickets. They're printed on tissue paper. They were having such fun bundling up all the, I forget what the currency was, but it's a crazy time. It's a crazy time.
They could alter it in such a way, because they were talented, that it didn't kill or really massively hurt the person. But that's some now just in the games that I saw. I mean, I haven't skated since David, but they hurt each other because they don't know what they're doing, because they've never practiced. Like Joni lined, it was different. Joni lined us all up one time in front of metal lockers and had us practice punching the locker. You'll pull your punch a bit if you're going to be punching a metal locker, because it hurts. Right, so it wasn't quite like you're describing, but she had us practice in front of metal lockers.
Okay. So you had to redo it then?
Yeah, which no problem. It was. I looked at it as practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was enjoyable. I mean, me personally, I even found things out that I never knew. Well, like I said, you were always my safe haven when I worked at NUMMI. So.
Oh, I'm glad I looked.
You were the first person, when I thought of doing this, you were the first person, apart from, of course, my father, that, I wanted to involve in this. So I'm really glad that you decided to do this with us?
Well, like I said, I've known your dad since he was 13 years old. He's a big brother. I've always said that.
Yep.
I'm close to your dad, and he's always stuck up for me. Because loud it knew me.
Yes.
Saying anybody trying to give me a hard time, your daddy was always there.
All right.
We would set up our period, what we call the period, what the men's period, while the women skate, okay? And we'd go back, and then there would be basically 3 jams out of the period that we would set up. So it would either be on the 2-4-6 or 1-3-5 jam, okay? So it may, on the second jam, maybe what we call red points or white points. Red shirts were the opposing team, and the white shirts were the home team, like the Bay Bombers, okay? So we would use a red and white dialogue with that to make it shorter so we can explain it to the team when we got back in the huddle after we went back on the track before the girls skated.
And actually we learned as a skater too, going through training, that there are certain places in the track that are better to block somebody. And usually, going into the turn, coming out of the turn, because that way, usually as you go into the turn, the person up high is cutting down in low, so he's coming towards the person, or going out of the turn, you want to kind of get up high, let the turn take you around if you get into that right groove, and whip you back up to the next rail. And otherwise you're like fighting your way around the track. So it was a learning experience.
So there's a game that exists online. It takes place in 1977. When I first saw it, I had no idea what I was looking at until I saw something in particular that blew my mind. So 1977, this was the Bombers versus the Chiefs at Kezar. This was the first Chiefs game against the Bombers of the season. So when I was little, I could take, because I knew it was quote unquote choreographed, stage, whatever you want to call it, I could take anybody doing anything to my father. But for some reason, seeing my father getting his head slammed into the rail freaked me the hell out. I don't know why. So back to this game, the first jam that my father went out on, he goes out against Johnny Rice. And what does Johnny do? He runs my father's head into the rail. And I lost it. I just freaked out. During the entire first half, I have no idea. I have no recollection of that first half because I just blacked out. My grandmother later on told me that all I would say during the first half was, I want to kill Johnny Rice. I want to kill Johnny Rice. So because I would not come out of this state, right when halftime hit, my grandmother, she was sitting off to the right of the score table. And so she goes up to Ken Kunzelman, the game announcer, and says to him, can you go get Cliff? I got a problem here with Vincent. So Kenny goes in the dressing room. He gets my father literally comes out of the dressing room and into the crowd to calm me down. And that was the only thing I could remember from him doing that is him saying to me, unball your fist, unball your fist, unball your fist. So fast forward to me watching this game. So it's only half of the game. I haven't seen the first half. So only half of this game I've seen. So it starts in the fifth period. So the women are out skating, and it's about 4, maybe 5 minutes into the period. The men are in the huddle. few moments later, the men come out of the huddle. You see my father kind of stand up, turn around, and then he skates over to the edge of the track, and he just stands there with his hands behind his back, just looking into the audience. And when I saw it, I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, what the hell is he looking at? Holy sh... He basically was standing on the edge of the track, checking up on me to see if I was okay. And when I saw him do that and realize what game it was and realize what he was doing, I remember what I did when he was standing on the edge of the track. I literally shrunk down in my seat because I was so embarrassed. Not because he was standing there looking at me. I was embarrassed that I just had this conniption in front of everybody for a whole half of the game. So looking back on that moment, yeah, as embarrassed as I was, yeah, it's a golden moment.